Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you here again, and welcome to the sixth keynote of AO Ventures. I'm here with Tom, who many of you guys have seen before. He did one of our previous keynotes, and he's back to do another one. He's a DevRel and founder in the Arweave ecosystem, and today he's here to talk to us about SQLite in AOS. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments in the Q&A section, and we'll stay on after the presentation to answer them live. With that being said, I'm excited to pass the mic to Tom, and we can get started.
Hey guys, thanks for having me back again. And I know everyone's busy building, and what I really wanted to do today is kind of show AOS and the custom modules of AOS. And one that I really am excited about is SQLite. SQLite is getting a little bit more popularity now throughout the development community. But one of the nice things is when you build it in a custom module in AOS, the module size is under like 3 meg. So you have AOS, which includes Lua compiler and WebAssembly, and then you have SQLite on top of that, which, like I said, combines for a total of like 3 meg, which makes it very lightweight but very powerful as well. What we'll do today is just go through kind of how I would uh, set up SQLite as a process, and I'm going to do a little bit of test-driven development. And yeah, I hope you enjoy it. Of course, some of the code is kind of set up for demo purposes, so this wouldn't be exactly how I would organize a project, but it does capture some workflows, and I hope, if anything, it generates a discussion on, kind of AO is new, AOS is new, and we're still kind of finding our way through uh, creating best practices to build on this platform. And this is one way that I found, and again, look forward to having conversations about other ways and other options. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and get started. And again, kind of I'm gonna code my way through it, but I'll provide these notes at the end, the speaker notes. Um, so if anyone wants to check it out, they can. The first thing that we will do with AO is we will install this template I created called AOS Test Kit. And we'll just use npx to install it. And I've already installed it, but it's basically using a GitHub repository, and it sets up this test kit suite that allows me to write local tests for my process and verify my code works before I push my process on AO itself. So it's just using a dgit, which then you just give it a repo name, and this is AOS test kit, and then what folder we want to use. So this would be chat room. And like I said, I've already installed this, so I'm not going to run it. But that will essentially create a project folder like this, and it'll contain a source directory and a test directory. Also contain this AOS SQLite WASM. And this is the actual WASM module that I've downloaded and put on my local repo. And it will allow me to use the same um, loader that's in AO to kind of load the WASM module and run some commands against it. So if we look in my package.json, you'll see that I have a dependency for permaweb AO-loader. And yeah, it's pretty neat. At least at least I like it. So we've got our test kit, and I'm just going to run yarn and then yarn test SQLite. And this test SQLite will actually run the module as an SQLite module. So it's going to set some environment variables here. We have format, and we're going to set the format to WASM32, unknown and scripting 2. And we've got AOS lite.wasm, which is the file we want to run. And then we're just running the node test runner here. So that's pretty cool. And then the next thing we want to do is bring in another package that I've been working on called dbadmin. And dbadmin just adds a couple of utility functions for SQLite in Lua. So if we want to look, and again, I've already run this curl command, and it's just pulling from this repo. At some point in the near future, I'm pretty excited that we'll have a an AOS package manager. I have some insight that that's very near in the future, and that would be something that this DB admin would be really suited for. Would be a package manager where I could install that source code, and then anyone could kind of open up a process and do, APM colon install and then the package name, and it could install into their process. But for now, we've got good old raw Git, and we can take a look at this file. Basically, it's a meta table format, and it's got really three functions on it. One is this tables function that will provide a list of the tables that are set up in SQLite. The other is a count function, which will give you the record count of any table you provide it. And then finally, an execute function where you give it a string of SQL, and it will return that and automatically add the results in a Lua table and give you those results to mess around with. So that's the DB admin package that we'll be using. It's pretty cool. And we'll go ahead and start to build our process. So I'm going to load the, let's see, I'll load the test up here. So I've got a test directory with main.test.js. And as I go, feel free to add questions in the comments, and then we'll stop at about 4:20 and then address all those questions. So as I go, if questions come up, feel free to add them in the comments, and we'll address them at the end of the presentation. That way you can just enjoy watching me make typos as I live code, and hopefully don't break too much. So the first thing you'll notice with this test is we're loading the main Lua file. And when you use AOS and you load a main file, if it requires a file in your folder, it'll automatically pick that up. But in our case, with this test kit, it's very new. It will not automatically pick up the DB admin module. So what we have to do is kind of add that load to test kit. So I'm just going to paste in the test, but basically it's very similar to the load source test. It's going to grab the dbadmin Lua file and then eval it, but it's going to wrap it in a function and load it as a package and return OK. And we're going to make sure our output is OK. So with that, I can save the file and just do yarn test SQLite, and my test passed. So one other thing to keep in mind with these tests, as I run the test, it's going to load the WebAssembly module and it's going to evaluate, and then it's going to take that memory and pass it to the next test. So when the next test runs, it will evaluate after the memory has changed from the first test. So the fact that I've loaded dbadmin, now when I load source, if it requires dbadmin, it will find it in its process. Cool. And so if we look at our main Lua file, it's not much there right now. It's 1+1, and we load the source and we evaluate it, and we get an output of 2, which is what comes with the test kit. But what we want to do is we want to create or establish a SQLite database in our process. So to do that, we will delete that and we'll add local SQLite 3 equals require L SQLite 3. Now, this package is made available because of the AOS SQLite module. So this package is available there. And then we're going to create a new database, and we want that database to be global. So that's why we're not putting the local prefix on it. And we're also saying if you've already created the database, don't create it again. And that's where the or comes from. And we're going to say SQLite 3 dot open memory. And open memory says, just load this into memory. We don't want it on a file system, just load it into memory because WebAssembly runs in memory. And we're going to grab our dbadmin module. So we'll do require dbadmin. And we're going to create the instance by doing .new and passing db in like that. And then we're just going to return OK. And then we're going to change our test and change our output here to, instead of 2, when it loads the code, we want to see OK. Cool. Now we're going to run our test, and it passed. And again, just to make sure that our tests are working, let's make it fail. So let's test that, and it failed. So actual was okay, and then expected O, but we really expected okay. So there, now we've got passing test, and we've got a module, a process that we're working on that has loaded and created a SQLite database. The next thing we want to do is add some tables, right? Because a SQLite database is not very good without tables. So let's create some tables. And in this presentation, we're kind of implementing the back end, if you will, of a dev chat room. And so we're going to implement a users table and a messages table. And then we're going to implement the register handler and the broadcast handler. And I think that will, I think we have enough time to do both. So that's what we're doing in this presentation. So we're going to init our DB tables and just a simple test. One of the things about TestKit, what I wanted to try to model it after, is if you were in the console itself and you typed send, so you just type send, and you can give it whatever tags you want. We'll say action, eval, and data. And this is one thing that's we're going to do for the test. When we run this initDB function, it's going to create the tables, and then it's going to return a list of tables using our dbadmin. And what we want to do is convert that list of tables into JSON so we can essentially do a deep equals test on it. So we're going to require JSON, and we're going to call encode, and then we're going to call our init DB function. That, and that's our message that we're going to send, and then we're going to assert deep equal and do result.output.data.output and users and messages and quotes. There we go. Cool. So that's our test. Let's make sure that it fails. So we've got one failing test in that DB tables, and let's go ahead and add our code. What we want to do is add our schemas, and I'm not going to type all of this out. Just going to paste this in. So we have a users table, and it's just a SQLite create table. What's nice about this is it's pure SQLite syntax. The users table has a process ID and a nickname. Our messages table has a message ID, a process ID that's a foreign key to the users table, a nickname, a body, and yeah, that's it. Now we've got this function, initdb, and what we want to do is return the tables that's created in this function. So we're going to do db admin tables, and that should return our array of tables. It'll actually be a Lua table that we're going to convert to JSON using our required JSON module. So let's give that a shot. Okay, so we got actual users and messages and expected users and messages. So operator deep equal. I think what I have to do is just do a JSON parse on our output. And let's see how we're doing. Cool. So we created some tables in AOS. Pretty cool. Now let's start on our register handler. So in the dev chat, you send a register action to the chat room to register a user. So what we're going to do is create a test to mimic that. And we've got a test right here, register a user, and we'll send an action register from, and we're just going to make up a PID, user PID, nickname, Rackus, and we'll log our result out, and then we're going to grab the first message. So one of the things that the register handler does is it sends back the person who registered a message saying that you registered. So we're going to grab that message from our result, and we're going to verify that we have it. And then we're going to check and make sure the target equals our PID. And we're going to make sure the action equals a dev chat registered. Cool. So that's our test. And now let's do our implementation. And with handlers, we're going to call handlers.add, and we'll call this devchat.register. And we need a handler add takes 3 arguments. It takes a name, and it takes a pattern function, and it takes a handle function. If the pattern function returns true or continue, the handle function gets called. if the pattern function returns false, then the handle function doesn't get called. When the pattern function returns either continue or false, it will go down the chain of handlers. If it returns true, it's going to execute the handle function and exit out of the chain of handlers. Since this is our first handler, you don't have to worry about that. But there's methods called prepend where you can stick your handler above all the handlers, or you can do before or after to position them because of this pattern matching functionality. And I'm going to just create a function and just return message.action equals register. And that's my pattern matching function for the register. And then I'm going to do a handle function. And again, to avoid having to make a ton of typos, I'm going to copy this in and explain it as we go. So what we want to do is first make sure that the user doesn't already exist. So here we're going to execute a query that's going to look for any user row that already exists for this given PID, our message from the caller. And then we're going to test and make sure that if the user exists, that we're going to just kindly let them know that they've already registered. So we're going to say if user count is greater than 0, then we're going to tell them, hey, you know what? You already registered. Thanks for trying to register again, but you already registered, and we're just going to return out of our handler. Now, if they haven't registered, that's when we need to insert some data in the database. So there are more than one way to insert. I'm using dbadmin exec, but you can also use statement prepare and add question marks. Again, it may be a better way to do it, but this way works. So what I'm using is string format and adding the values here, message.from and message.nickname into the SQL statement, and then I'm calling execute. And right now, I'm I'm assuming for this demo that it's going to work. And then what I will do is send back a response back to the caller as a message. Hey, dev chat's registered and the data is successfully registered. And then finally, I'm going to print to my console, hey, this nickname was registered. And we can hit in. I hadn't already. Cool. Okay, so that's our register handler. We'll go ahead and save that and let's run it. Cool. So it's all green, which is good. And we can see that we created a message, and that message says successfully registered, and we test and it has the action dev chat registered. So we didn't break out, so the user didn't exist, and we can see that our insert worked, which is pretty cool. Now, the next one we want to do is the broadcast. And this will actually insert a message. So we've got a little test here for broadcast. And this broadcast test basically is going to send from user PID action broadcast hello world. And then we're going to log out the message again so we can see it. And then we're going to just do an OK on assignments, because what this handler is going to do is it's going to insert the message in the SQLite, but it's also going to use assignments to send all the registered users the broadcasted message so that they can receive that in their inbox. So we'll do that. So handlers.add, and this is dev chat broadcast. And again, we'll create a function for our pattern matching, and it's going to do message action equals broadcast. And then we'll create our handle function. And the handle function, we want to get the user. And then we want to say if that user is valid, then we'll add the message and we'll send the message to all the registered users. And we'll need to get the registered users to do that. Okay, so to get the user, again, it's pretty straightforward with SQL. So we're going to set a local variable for user. We're going to call dbadmin execute and use string format and just say select PID and nickname from users where PID equals message.from, and then give us the first one. Now, there's probably better ways to do that, but hopefully with this demo, you kind of get the gist. We're just calling a select statement in SQL to give us a result. And by default, dbadmin execute returns an array or a table of rows, and we just want to get the first row. And if we do, then we have a user. So we're going to say if user, weird, do this. If user, then we want to add a message. So to add a message, we're going to call dbadmin exec and string.format. And what's super fun is using these double square brackets, because if you have to write double quotes, I've just really enjoyed that about Lua, just adding these double square brackets, and I don't have to worry about escaping quotes or anything like that. And what we're going to do is an insert into messages, and we're going to insert the message ID, the PID, nick, and body. And then our values will be just some strings that we will inject. That cool. So after our square brackets, we need to add the the variables for each one of those strings in the position. So we're going to do message.id, user.id, or PID, and user.nickname, and we want message.data, right? Cool. So that's our string formatter. We'll close that, and then we'll close db exec. And now we want to get our registered users, because now that we have our message, we need to tell the world. And we're going to use a utility called map, which will basically take a function and a table, an array, and it will map over all the items in the table and apply each item to the function. So what we're going to do is essentially change the table of users to an array of PIDs, which will be our assignment list. So we'll say local users equals utils.map, and we'll go function u and return u.pid. And then we'll add our table, which will be db admin exec, and it's just select PID from users, and we'll close our map. Cool. So that'll give us a list of PIDs, and now we can work on our send, our broadcasted message. So we can send to all the users, and that's just a send. We'll say target equals message.from. So we'll send the message to the user who sent it. And we're going to say action equals broadcasted. And we're going to say assignments equals users. And data equals message.data. And type equals normal. And this is just part of the dev chat protocol. And nickname equals user dot nickname. I think I got all of that right. And then we'll just print broadcasted message. And I'm going to return with an OK. And then I'm going to add an else and say if it's not a user, we're going to send the target message from. We're going to reply back to the sender and say that you're not registered. Only registered users can broadcast to the chat room. And we'll print user not registered. We'll just add message.from. Cool. Okay, I know that is a lot of code. We'll end our handler there. And let's see if it works. Okay, kind of thought that would break. Okay, cannot read properties undefined of includes. Well, we did get a message back. It's got all of our tags, which is cool, and hello world, and our assignments is an array. So let's go and maybe check that out. So do let's just print out assignments. Maybe it's returning a string, and we want to do a parse. So let's see. Console log. I miss it. Maybe I didn't save it. That's probably what happened. Okay. Interesting. Back this up. That's really weird. One of the reasons to have tests, right? Let's do result.messages. Oh, register a user. It's not completing. That's why. Let's it's stuck on register a user. See why I'm stuck on register user. Maybe. Comment out. Okay, register user, and then undefined. Okay, so register user passed, and now we've got undefined for our message. So let's paste this back in. Broadcast, get the user ID. We insert it into the database. We map over PIDs. We send to the user. Return OK. Let's try that again. We got our data. We've got the target, and we've got these tags. I think I see the problem. So we go to assignments, and it should be tags dot assignments. Well, let's just do tags. Okay. And let's do dot find t dot name equals assignments, and value. Okay. Cool. So we've got the user PID. So let's go to result OK. And well, let's do this. Do const assignments equals okay. So we've got assignments, and then we're just gonna get there. Call assignments that includes user PID. So let's try that. Cool. So we ran our code. Again, we're running it all locally, but I think now we reached a point where we can actually spawn a process and test this on AOS and see how everything works. So let's go through that a little bit. And let's see, I want to Just exit out of that. There we go. All right. So to load it in AOS, we're going to spawn a new process. Let's call it chat room demo. And we need to give it our SQLite module. And I'm just going to copy the module ID. So when you spawn a new process, if you don't tell it what module to use, it'll use the default AOS module, which doesn't have SQLite in it. So we're going to spawn AOS chat room demo. That's weird. I think this is because I changed my node version. Get AO. Gateway.io. Cool. So we're going to spawn this new process. And once it's up and running, we're going to then load our module code. So we'll do dot load source main dot lua. And since main.lua requires dbadmin, it should grab dbadmin and load that. And we get an OK back, which is cool. And then we're going to run init db. And we've got our users and messages database. And now let's just do a register and broadcast. So let's do a send target equals AO.ID, action equals register, nickname equals chat room, and we've got our message back. Successfully registered. Cool. Now, what we can do is say dbadmin x, let's do count and users. Awesome. We've got one user in our database. Now let's do db admin execute, select all from users, semicolon. Cool. We've got a user that we just registered. Now let's do a broadcast. So we'll do send target equals AO.ID, action equals broadcast, data equals hello world. Okay. And hopefully we broadcasted the message. Pretty cool. Let's look at the count of our messages table. Cool. We've got one message. And now let's see what our message looks like. We've got our nick, we've got a body, and we've got a message ID. Awesome. So we have deployed a working AOS SQLite process, and it is doing our queries, doing inserts, it'll do updates, it'll do everything you can do with SQLite, which is pretty cool. And if we want to look at our DB, you can just do DB. Oops. Maybe that's not good. We want to look at SQLite, so we'll do require SQLite 3, and that should like print our SQLite, and we can get some information about some stuff there. Open memory is the function, and version is a function, so we can say version and we can see that it supports 3.45.3. And yeah, that's a quick little demo on how to add an indexer to your process. Um, and again, hopefully you were able to follow along and happy to answer any questions. So thanks again for uh, bearing with me and happy to answer any questions.
Amazing. Thank you, Tom. We got to see some live debugging there, which I'm sure will be a valuable and informative experience for everybody. Um, let me see. Okay, we got a few questions that I will read out to you now. So first question, I managed to build with Emscription a popular library for fully homomorphic encryption. The tests look good. Do you think it will be a good addition to AOS? Basically, I need to build a Lua interface for the C++ code, which became JS and WASM as a shared library.
Yeah, I think that's what AOS and AO is for is again not to have any kind of preferences, and as long as the main principle of AO is it has to be deterministic. So every time you send messages to a process, it gets stored on Arweave, and at any time you should be able to replay those messages and get the exact same result. So as long as your build is deterministic and it's proven, then yeah, I think it's a welcome addition to AO and AOS.
And has the documentation been posted yet about assignments in case I need to revisit these instructions when I'm doing it?
Yes. So there is some documentation on assignments. More is coming out. We still have a couple of bugs to address, but there is documentation. I'll post a link in the chat. Just let me find it. Um, there we go.
Great. Thank you. Um, what are some example use cases you envision the SQLite module being best for? Are there any use cases that it would not be best suited for, i.e., high read/write frequency, etc.?
Um, yeah, we're still exploring, but I do think uh, for anything that's got a large amount of data that you want to index, essentially find specific data quickly, that SQLite is a really good choice. Right now, you have SQLite or Lua tables. And with Lua tables, if you want to make those fast, you have to write your own index. So I think SQLite is a really um, good alternative than a Lua table to find things without having to loop through every record or essentially do a table scan to find them. The other thing is if any of your entities have relationships, like in this one, I don't know if you noticed the foreign key, but there was a foreign key that related each message to a particular process, which by creating that foreign key creates an index. So if I want to find all the messages for Jesse, for example, I can quickly do that. Whereas if I'm using Lua tables, I have to kind of implicitly uh, add those filters in code versus getting that for free. So those are two reasons I would recommend using SQLite.
Okay. That looks like all the questions. We'll wait 5, 10 seconds, see if any more come in. But thank you, Tom. Thank you for the demo. And thank you, everybody, for being here as always. We're going to be having a keynote from Phil, the founder of R Drive and Ario, on Thursday, and then we'll also be having our two keynotes next week, and we'll make sure to email you guys about that. If you guys haven't received the email, June 5th is the date for receiving a 5-minute recording of your project. So please send that over to me, my email, jparacelli@communitylabs.com. And we're going to go and review those all as a team. And if we have any questions, we'll reach out to you guys directly. Um, but anyways, thank you guys. Thank you, Tom. We'll see you guys later, and we're excited to see what you guys build as always. So cheers.
Thanks, guys.